Hello, it's Jack Gill, and welcome back to Mundo Sporto. I am joined today live with Corey from the West Ham Way, and we're just going to have a bit of a chat about this weekend's action, some of the results, a look ahead to next weekend too. One of the big talking points of this weekend, Corey, apart from VAR, is West Ham, who continue to impress everybody. Jesse Lingard, wow.
Yeah, keep writing us off, everyone. The media, everything. Was it Liverpool, Chelsea search for top fours, and West Ham just keep picking up points. And it's been, ask any West Ham fan, the past 3 weeks have been the most, or the past 3 game weeks have been the most stressful. 3 goals up, and we've conceded 3 goals against Arsenal and 2 in the last 2. But the most important thing is getting the points. We did get a point against Arsenal. We have got 6 points against Wolves and Leicester. So, yeah, Lingard, mate, superlatives just never end. Really, he's just unbelievable. He shocks me every time I watch him play. He's up there. I mean, I tell you what, he's giving Southgate some serious issues because Maddison obviously had his problem with that, with the COVID-19 party type thing. So again, he'll look at Lingard as the more reliable option. It'd be lovely to see him at the Euros.
Yeah, and you mentioned there you're running out of superlatives for him. Do you think West Ham will get him permanently in the summer?
I've just done a video on how much I would pay for him, and I think that's the crucial thing to remember. I think United will cash in on him. I think that was the plan anyway. It's worked really well for them. I've heard we're going to go all out for him, which I completely understand. I think as well, what goes under the radar with Jesse is he didn't play for 18 months, so he's got a little bit more mileage on the clock than a normal 28-year-old, and he's kind of coming into his prime. I think we can do it. I've said I would pay 25, maybe even 30 at a push, because I just can't believe how good he is. He's perfect for our side. I think we complement him really well. He's fitted in really well with the squad. And if we get into Europe next season, you're going to need a player like that, because I think if West Ham can get more bodies in, a little bit more quality, then we're really going to start building something special.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for West Ham this summer, isn't it? Because we spoke before on this podcast about Declan Rice, and if you manage to keep him. I know in the past we've spoke about Declan Rice being West Ham's most important player, and recently when he got injured, I think a lot of people thought, okay, this is where West Ham will start to fall off, but they haven't. You've looked just as strong without Declan Rice going forwards, though you are leaking more goals defensively.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We've gone to that 5 at the back and 3 in midfield, and we've obviously had to back out that midfield a little bit because Mark Noble isn't the quickest, as we all know. But I thought he was really good again against Leicester in terms of his passing range. I think this squad is really in tune with. They're just really intelligent on the field as well. They understand what the manager's asking for them. They work very selflessly. But the goals is a bit of a concern. I think, look, we've managed without Declan just about. We have to play a different way. Antonio, you've seen West Ham can still get goals. But I think we need Angelo Ogbonna back in there because he's been gone a while now. He's back in training. And if we can get him back for that big game against Chelsea, then who knows, mate. But he's been such a massive miss. And he goes under the radar by a lot of fans as well.
Yeah, it's a huge next few weeks for West Ham, isn't it? Because I think after the international break, a few people were wondering whether West Ham would fall off. But you've started strongly back after the international break. And now you've got 7 games to keep plodding along, keep picking up points, and you're well within your rights to get a place in the top 4 between now and the end of the season.
7 cup finals, mate. I think that's Nolan said it the other day. They feel like cup finals. They're played like cup finals. They're as stressful as one. It is, and the fact we beat Leicester, where I would have said a draw would have been good given our injury problems. And then you kind of look at some of the fixtures coming up. Newcastle, you'd feel they're probably safe now, and maybe that takes the pressure off from going into West Ham. West Brom have picked up points, but looking half decent. But again, West Ham should go and beat. It's just about getting a run of fixtures, mate. We saw it with Tottenham a few weeks ago. They won 4 games, and all of a sudden they're a top 4 side again, and now they are where they are. So it's the same for West Ham. You go and win those games, we give ourselves a great chance. And just from my perspective, just to see us in Europe, even if it is Europa League, and it will be in the group stage, because I imagine West Ham will finish in the top 6. That's a huge achievement with the squad and the injuries that we've got.
And we'll talk a bit about Leicester now, Corey, because you mentioned there about some of the problems they had off the field ahead of that West Ham game. A few weeks ago, they were 10 points above Liverpool. They'd just beaten Liverpool, of course. Now they find themselves in a situation where I'm sure they're looking over their shoulders a bit at the likes of Liverpool, because that advantage has got really slim now.
Yeah, well, I said it going into this game, like we were only 4 points behind them, and if we won, then you close the gap, and then they got to start looking over their shoulder. And they were guilty last year of tailing off. And I don't really understand with Leicester. Like I watched them play, and particularly in those last 20 minutes, I know we were under the cosh and we sat back, but it was like, where's this performance come from? And it just seems like they're a little bit too inconsistent. And Rodgers is a brilliant coach, and he's getting a lot out of those players. But again, I personally believe if they didn't get top 4 this season, that is an underachievement because of where they've been throughout the entirety. And like you say, Liverpool again picking up points in the league. Particularly, you look at the Trent goal. That's the type of game where if Liverpool don't win it, then they're not in it, and they really want it. Chelsea won't go anywhere. They played brilliantly against Crystal Palace, so they are in serious danger, I feel, mate. And because it's so tight as well, a couple of dodgy results, they can end up 6th or 7th. So, it's pressure's on for Brennan.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's a bit of a Leicester thing there, but it's also a bit of a Brendan Rodgers thing, isn't it? And I'm sure he's keen to get rid of that cloud hanging over him, really, because obviously we know what happened when he was at Liverpool with that title race. And then, as you say, last year falling off with Leicester at the end of the season too. He'll be keen to avoid it again this season.
Yeah, he has to for me. I think we give him a lot of plaudits for the job that he's done at Leicester and the way that they play. But at the same time, you can't. I don't know what it is with mentality. Probably the best example is that Leicester-West Ham game, because you looked at a West Ham side with the injuries. Creswell got injured throughout the game. Noble went off 10 minutes to go, and we still kept going and we still wanted it. And you can't really replace that. And you see with Liverpool last year, that excessive mentality where you're 20 points ahead and you're still going, you need it. And I don't know whether... Look, Rodgers is still relatively a young coach. I know he's been around the block in the past 10 years or so, but he's got to get that in his game for him to be considered as a top coach and for him to go on to, without disrespect to Leicester, an even bigger club.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned it there with Chelsea. They bounced back brilliantly at the weekend against Crystal Palace. Obviously, they came into that off the back of a disappointing defeat to West Brom the week previously. But they show no sign of fading either.
No, they were superb. I thought they were absolutely brilliant first half against Crystal Palace. They were just intense. We spoke about Chelsea not being able to score goals, but that front line of Havertz, Pulisic and Mount were just ripping Crystal. And listen, Crystal Palace aren't a great side. We know that. And conventional 4-4-2 and systems, it works perfectly for Chelsea. But I thought Havertz looked a player. And I think there was one point in the game where he's flicked it over Van Aanholt's head, and if he scores that may be goal of the season just because of the ball from Jorginho. So people sleep on Chelsea. They've spent 200 odd million over the past summer or so, and if you've got a top coach like Tuchel, you are going to start performing. Hopefully for West Ham, they can bottle it at some point, or they get to the semi-finals of a Champions League and it becomes very, very difficult. That's the kind of thing that as a top 4 contender I'm looking at. But yeah, mate, unbelievable. And I think he's gone past that new manager bounce as well. He was unlucky. Look, they got a man sent off against West Brom. It happens. But I think you can see that they got a real plan in place, and the players are playing for him as well.
West Brom desperate for points at the minute as well, aren't they? And I said a few weeks ago, I feel like I don't want to rule West Brom out of staying up because, the manager...
Brilliant yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. They're a side. Sam Allardyce is a manager who loves this stage of the season and will just find something to start picking up points, and that's exactly what West Brom have started doing recently. And I look at West Ham's fixtures and they look easy on paper. They look like you've got a decent run to be fair, bar that Chelsea game. But actually, you're playing a lot of teams who are down in that dog race and will be fighting, and seeing West Ham as a side where they can go to in high spirits and hopefully knock their confidence down a bit. But yeah, I think. It's an interesting top 4 race. We've mentioned Chelsea there. I think they did look really, really good the other day. Kai Havertz starting to look like he's settling down into the Premier League. I like him in the false 9 position. I've always felt that's his best position, Kai Havertz. So yeah, that's the worry for other clubs really now with Chelsea, that their new signings they're starting to gel a bit.
Yeah, Havertz is unreal. And I think people were probably a bit harsh on him. I think the criticism of Timo Werner's fair because he was playing week in, week out. Havertz has had COVID and he's had a bit of inconsistency, and Lampard's left. But if anyone watched him at Bayer Leverkusen, you see a lot of players, they sort of adopt to a false 9 role, but he actually just looks like a player that is a false 9, and he can just play that, and he's tall as well, and he's good in the air. So there are things of his game that I think Chelsea will really benefit from. I think it's interesting they're talking about the summer bringing in a number 9. I mean, you spent 70 odd mil on Havertz, 50 on Timo, and now you're possibly looking at a Haaland or someone else to bring in. So again, it's going to be problems for everyone next season because Chelsea will take it to another level, and I imagine they'll be competing for the title next season. That's just how I feel, because give Tuchel a summer, give him a bit of money, and I feel they'll be right up there.
And we'll move on to talk about Tottenham versus Manchester United now from the weekend, Corey. But we can't really talk about that without first talking about VAR, which I think has been a bit of a shit show all weekend, hasn't it? We had obviously the first goal for Manchester United ruled out at the weekend for that, what was a very strange situation where Son seemed to be caught by the fingertips of, I think it was Scott McTominay, weren't it? And then yesterday we had the offside decision against West Brom, which I thought was another one that was a bit ridiculous. But it's what do you think is the problem, mate? Do you think it's VAR or do you think it's the people that are using it?
I think it's a bit of everything, but I also think the rules as well. I mean, the rules for the offside. I mean, if you watch the Wolves game, it's because when you watch that goal that Wolves score, you think, I don't understand what they're flagging for, and then it goes to a really minute bit of detail. And I think that these refs, there's no common sense at the minute, and VAR is just exposing it. The rules have to change as well for us to get a fair decision to be made. And again, I don't think we've got the technology anyway with VAR, so I think there is an issue from that regarding offsides. And I think Wenger's come out and said that he wants like an automated offside system, which, to be honest, we are moving towards getting rid of referees. But the reality is the standard is so poor. No one knows what's going on. You've got the organisation coming out about that Son decision saying that it was careless from McTominay. For me, that just sounds like someone who doesn't understand football. It's a contact sport. I'm not saying go and elbow someone, clearly, but if you've just put your hand out to keep them off, you can't just... It's ruining it. And I think we're getting away with it this season because there's no fans in the ground. But if there's fans in the ground, particularly with some of those decisions where they don't blow the whistle, right, or they allow an offside to go on right until the final phase of play, it's going to ruin everything. It's going to ruin reactions, how we enjoy the game. You can see it coming in now. So it has been a farce all season. But I think they're going to have to look at the rule book as well, like we saw with a handball early doors where it was an absolute nightmare.
I completely agree with you. And, I do think VAR is the way forward. I just think the people using it are a bit incompetent, and I think the way they're using it at the moment isn't the right way to use VAR. I think, I'm looking at that situation at the weekend, and to be fair, it's not anything new in football. I remember Lazar Markovic playing for Liverpool in the Europa League a few seasons ago, getting sent off for a similar thing, a straight red card. So, these things do happen, but you'd expect, and the whole reason for VAR and the introduction of VAR was to get rid of that margin for error and to ensure that, it cuts that out and it makes for a fairer game. But it's done anything but.
Yeah, but it's like it takes everything to the nth degree because they're saying it's got to be, if it's just one part of your arm or, and the things like that where people say you can't score with one part of your arm. So why are you counting that as part of the offside? So it's exposing a lot to do with the rules. But equally, I think just in terms of enjoyment of the game and watching it, and goals in particular, is a huge one where they're being pulled back. And again, like for me, they just don't seem the right decisions. We saw it. I remember watching West Ham last year when we scored last minute against Sheffield United, and the ball was cannoned off Declan Rice. He's got no control over whether he's moving his arm or not. But VAR's exposed it. Now, what would you say it's VAR's fault, or would you say it's the ref's fault? The rule book says that that's what it is. So therefore, and I think there's a lot of frustration as football fans. We know the game and we know how we want it to be played. And there's a big call for a lot of footballers and ex-pros to be involved in the decision-making process for the rules going forward. But yeah, I think they've got to sort out the rule book in the summer. I think they've got to evaluate it. And I think VAR, I'm not saying it's improved. I think at the beginning it was painful. It was like pulling teeth because the review process was so long. When I was in the ground, it's 5 minutes before you get a decision. But I think having a better understanding and a better rule book is going to help us a bit more. And if they don't follow it, then it's the refs. And we know it's kind of the refs anyway, but we can just narrow down that process. It's a horror show, mate. It's awful. Best league in the world, and we can't get decisions right, or we're ruining the game.
It seems like the common sense has been taken away from football for me, Corey. I feel like a lot of I'm a referee myself at Saturday football level, and it's one of them where, as a referee that does it like for fun almost on weekends, I'm getting fed up watching them because there's just no common sense applied. There's no consistency. There's nothing. And, people were worried when VAR would first come in, when VAR first came in, that, that it would get rid of talking points from the game, but it's creating more talking points. And it shouldn't be like that. It should be, it should be one where we're talking about VAR making the game fairer, but it's done anything but that. And I think it's just disappointing, and I absolutely do blame the officials using it. I agree with you as well. I blame the rules. I think that decision to make the offside rule so as stupid as it is, I think was a farce, and we've seen that they've changed it now already, haven't they? They've made it clear that at the end of this season it will be changing ahead of the Euros, so they know they've ballsed up. But what I'd like to see more from referees and everyone involved in the decision-making process of football is when they make a mistake, hold their hands up, take accountability for it, and just say, look, we were wrong, because they get so much more respect from football fans if they just went, look, it's a learning process, but we will make sure it gets better.
It's infuriating. Like, it really is. Like, and if you watch BT with Peter Walton, where he comes on and he says something really vague, like, well, I can see how they've given it and I can see how they haven't. I'm like, all we want is a little bit more clear cut and just a bit more transparency regarding that. And that's why they want to bring in microphones, and that's why they want refs to come out after the games. And I think we've seen it in rugby a few weeks ago where the refs made a bad decision, but you can hear his thought process. You can try and understand it. And I think that's got to be a big part of it, because it's hurting fans' understanding of the game. There's a lot of confusion going on, and you're right. It's just illuminating the poor standard of officiating. And listen, I hope it gets sorted out. I think all VAR is doing is just exposing it. And we had Mike Dean anyway on Sunday, and he's a nightmare as it is. So I don't know, maybe Mike Dean would love a microphone so everyone can hear what he's got to say about himself. But yeah, mate, look, I mean, let's hope next season's a lot better. I'm sure it will be. There's a lot of pressure with fans in the ground now as well from what we've seen. So fingers crossed.
My favourite Peter Walton moment came at the weekend when it was Liam Cooper's challenge on Gabriel Jesus, where he goes, I think that's a yellow. And straight after he gets sent over to the monitor to look at it, and the red's brandished from the referee when you see it from a different angle. So, yeah, it's incredibly difficult. I know refereeing isn't an easy job, but it's one of those things where they're at the highest level, and quite simply, Corey, it should be and it needs to be better.
Yeah, and with the Liam Cooper tackle as well, like, shows you how much football's changed, because it is a red. But in terms of when I've played football, my understanding was you got the ball, then you're okay. And even now you're seeing like how far the game's advanced in terms of rules and changes in rules. You can't make those type of tackles anymore. So yeah, I can't keep up with it. I know it's been in a few years in terms of excessive force, but I do think if you listen to the ref on that, and he said, look, it's excessive force. He's gone over the ball. He's gone knee height. Everyone, you cut out the debate, ironically. The debate that everyone says you need as part of the game. Everyone's like, okay, fair enough. And then you can get on with the football, which is what everyone's there to watch, not talk about decisions and watch things from 50 different angles with funny little Microsoft Paint lines. It's infuriating, man. It's infuriating. I'll try not to get into it. You're a ref, so you're probably even more infuriated by the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I feel like we could talk about that all day. But I think it's good that everyone notices it at the minute, and it's been a big talking point all weekend. It's been a really shocking weekend for VAR. And yeah, let us know in the comments what you think surrounding VAR, and we'll get back to that in a moment. But Corey, Manchester United roll on. They look like they're certainly going to finish second now in the league. It was a comfortable win for them against Tottenham at the weekend, despite going 1-0 down.
Yeah, I didn't really watch the game. I've watched the highlights of the goals, and there's no real shock there. I think from a Tottenham point of view, defensively all over the place. They haven't been able to deal with it. I know Pogba had a great last 15, but just the demise of Tottenham. As much as I enjoy it as a West Ham fan, it must be absolutely horrific to see, because I think people say they still have a relatively decent squad. It's not as bad as how they're coming across, and Mourinho's forcing them even further down. And listen, this summer's huge for them. I know we're talking about Man United. For me, dead certs for obviously top four. And I think fair play to Ollie. I've written him off a fair few times. But I guess in the grander scheme of things, maybe he's just stabilised that boat long enough for Man United to be in title contention next year. But Tottenham have got huge problems. I think they don't get top four. Kane's going to want to leave. Son's also going to look at leaving. The squad is struggling again. There's a lot of people that need to go out, need to come in. Is the money there? There's so many things, and again, they almost can't afford to get rid of him. So they're in a horrific situation. But yeah, defensively awful. And listen, everyone goes on about Mourinho as this brilliant defensive coach and pulling off masterclasses in the new camp, but you can't tell that. You can't tell that from that Tottenham side. So he needs to respond. I thought his response to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in the post-match conference was embarrassing, and it's a shame because he's one of the greatest managers of all time, or certainly in my era. Like, for him to be pointing at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and throwing his toys out the pram again is bizarre. But yeah, I think it had a lot more riding on it for Spurs than it did for Man United.
And what do you think now? There was a comment earlier about Tottenham finishing top four. For me, there's absolutely no chance of anything like that. And they've got a real job on their hands if they want to finish inside the top six.
Yeah, look, I mean, this league's weird this season. It's clearly by West Ham being, 1 point off third, but you can't rule Tottenham off just because if they get a few wins or Kane gets a penalty or whatever, maybe they'll still be kicking in and around. But certainly from watching them play, they've got no right to be even in the top six for me. They're horrific. They are relying massively on Kane to bail them out in a lot of situations, but it's not enough this season. You look at Liverpool now pulling stuff together, Trent popping up with a goal, West Ham, Jarrod Bowen coming in for Antonio, Chelsea exactly the same, people popping up with goals all over the place. You can't just rely on one man to carry you to the top four. And I think, they're in problems. They're in problems. And it's not even really this season because I think they can get away with it. I'll be looking at next season. If someone goes, depending on who they bring in, if they've still got Jose, where are they going to be? Because for a fact, all those teams that I've mentioned, West Ham, Liverpool, Chelsea, will all strengthen. Aston Villa will go again. Everton certainly will. Where does that leave Tottenham? And I think that's going to be a lot of problems for Tottenham fans.
It's almost like they need a bit of a project, isn't it, Corey? Almost like they need Pochettino.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't have. Well, I mean, I say they shouldn't have sacked him. It went a bit stale, but it probably wasn't even Listen, I really rate Pochettino, and it pains me to say as a West Ham fan, I thought him and Tottenham at one point were brilliant to watch, but the wrong manager. And I think it's odd you bring in a manager to go and toughen you up and win trophies. And if they get the Carabao Cup, has he done his job? Did you know what I mean? You expect more from Jose Mourinho. I think Jose Mourinho is a bit of a victim of modern day football, and the players have changed, and he's got to change with the times for him to still stay relevant. They picked the wrong manager. They should have picked a young a Nagelsmann or someone on the up, or even we've seen with Tuchel to a degree. I probably wouldn't have gone from PSG to Spurs, but that type of manager, I think Mourinho was always a huge risk, and now they haven't won anything when he was in his upward curve. Now he's in the downward curve. Again, it's all gone wrong, and he's tied into such a big contract as well that I don't think they're going to pay him out of it, to be honest. I think unless it gets horrifically bad, then he'll be there next season. And
what do you think would be next for Jose Mourinho? Do you think it would be an international football job?
Yeah, I'd like to see it. I kind of like Jose. Maybe it was a documentary, but there's parts of his character that I think people like. But it's when he starts throwing his toys out the pram. I think international football, you can see Jose winning stuff at international level, to be honest. That probably suits him at this stage. But listen, he's not, age-wise, he's not past it. So I think it's almost a bit of it'd be good to see him have a bit of a sabbatical, reflect. I know he brought in a new coach as well when he went into Spurs. He was quite highly recommended from Lille. And I guess that was kind of what he wanted. There's nothing when you watch Spurs to suggest that they're playing an attacking, fluid style of football either. So he either takes a break or maybe does a Portugal job. It'd be crazy to see him at a World Cup, to be honest. But yeah, no, he's got to go back to the drawing board for me. He's too far out of the loop now. So yeah.
And do you think he'll get past this season at Spurs, or can you not see it?
No, I think he'll do it. I think he'll get to the end. There's no point really now. I don't think anything could happen. I think if Tottenham need Europa League minimum, it won't keep Kane, but it might keep him in a job. Carabao Cup again, he's got to go and pull something out of the bag. I think he's there next season. I think Tottenham will sack him. They'll have to sack him at some point, and it'll probably be halfway through next season. I think he just keeps it because of the financial. We know what Daniel Levy's like with his purse strings. He's not gonna flex someone trying to get rid of a manager. So again, it's his issue. I know there's a lot of ego behind it because he was the man that wanted to bring Mourinho in, and again, a lot of pride says that he's going to keep him in that job and give him the best possible opportunity. But again, I think it's just a dead rubber. I think he's a cert to leave at some point next year.
And we have to talk about the big story of the weekend, really. That's not a big story, but should be. We've gone 25 minutes through this podcast and not really mentioned it once, despite it being, huge news of the weekend. I tried to get Joe Wainman on here, of course, with us today, but unfortunately he was busy. But what a performance by 10-man Leeds at the weekend, Corey. Look, we know City made a lot of changes. They weren't at their best, but Leeds looked good again.
In fairness, Joe's still probably at the pub celebrating after that because he was absolutely buzzing about it, and it's great. It was great to see, like it really was. I had a feeling about when you see games come up and you think, I tell you what, this has got something about it. And when Dallas scored that goal, I thought, here we go. But yeah, no, really, and I think a lot of people are pulling up the fact that Leeds managed to hold on, play defensive football. And I think a team like that, it's not really about shape. It's hard work and concentration, and that Bielsa side is drilled. Like they know their roles for 90 minutes. Whether they're going and trying to play fluid, expansive football, whether they're sitting behind the ball. City were, I don't want to say toothless. It's probably a little bit harsh, but they struggled. I mean, the personnel that they brought in again didn't give them what they needed. They should have probably brought on a De Bruyne. You can take games by the scruff of the neck and change it, but the focus for Man City. I don't think they'll be looking at that result and being too sort of beat up about it. I think they need to go far in the Champions League. City, for me, need to get to the semi-final or the final, or possibly even win it. Because I don't know about you, but like when Chelsea were going through that period of time where they were winning stuff in the league, but they never really cracked the Champions League. They were an okay club, but they were never like an elite club. And Man City are desperate for it. If they get a Champions League, then again, it puts us all in a big problems because they go and sign whoever the hell they want. But as a club, they need it. So I think it doesn't affect them. Fair play Leeds. Again, top half finish, I think this season is pretty much destined for them. They deserve it. As a West Ham fan, I worry. I think there'll be a natural drop-off for us. And I think Leeds will go and sign a couple of players next year. And I think a couple of decent technical players in that squad. I think they do brilliantly because that's what they're missing. You watch them play so many little technical mistakes. You get the right players in and they'll kick on. So well done, Marcelo. I'm sure they're absolutely. But the only shame is there's no fans there, mate. That's a shame because you always get a result like that every season. And as a West Ham fan, I've had it against United or Chelsea, and a being there is the main thing. And for them not to have that in their first season back against Man City, champions elect, is a bit gutting.
I think the City lineup was really telling, about what Pep Guardiola is thinking about right now, and it's very clear that he had one eye on that Champions League game against Dortmund on Wednesday night. I think for me, as you said, as you mentioned there quite brilliantly, City are desperate to put themselves on the European map. They want to do that. They want to be able to sign these big players. They want to be able to deem themselves as an elite club. But in the last few years, when they've been at their best in the history of the club, they've still come nowhere near it. And now they're in a situation where the league looks pretty much wrapped up. They're in the final of the Carabao Cup. They're in the semi-final of the FA Cup. It's all eyes on the Champions League for them, and they did well to get a lead from the Etihad against Dortmund, obviously in the last leg. But they've still got work to do, and I know Pep Guardiola spoke about the Champions League draw and said, look, playing Leeds, in the middle of those ties is the hardest thing to do because the energy that you have to consume in those sorts of games against a Bielsa side. Yeah,
completely agree. I'm not going to give Pep too much leeway on that one. I mean, he's got a second squad in here, a second 11 that a lot of people will be like. But a relevant point, a lot of players have come back from injury and haven't played that much. And I think that's probably a fair point to make against a real high-intensity Leeds team. But they never look convincing for me, Man City, in the Champions League. They did in the last round, maybe against Borussia Mönchengladbach, possibly even the group stage. But I just feel like when they get to these knockout stages, there's something missing. You haven't got a player there that's been there and won it, and the club don't have the history either to carry them through. With Liverpool, it's historic. Like that's what they do, and the players feel it, and the fans feel it, and that gets you through games. We saw Madrid against Liverpool. Again, players in Kroos and Modric that had won it had been there. In theory, you'd probably fancy Liverpool, but they controlled the game. And City, as good a players as they have, they don't have Champions League winners. They don't have players right at the top of their level. Maybe they do. I just can't remember, but it just feels like they don't. And that's what they need. And it's a problem for everyone else because, like I say, if City go and win the Champions League, all of a sudden you've got a team with De Bruyne that's won it, Diaz that's won it, players like that, Sterling. And all of a sudden they can start to build that kind of mentality where we're actually good in Europe. It's a mentality thing. I remember when City got all the money in the first place and they couldn't get through the group stages. And that was a real tough ask for them to just get through that. And they should have been clear favourites. So it's a long process, mate. But he has to, for me, even if he doesn't win an FA Cup, even a Carabao Cup, I think if he won the Champions League and the Premier League, he's done an amazing job. That's what he's been brought in to do. Let's be honest. He's been brought in to go and do something that no one else has done. So, yeah, big ask.
It's say it, but I don't know what's worse, because I know if they don't win the Champions League, they're probably more likely to go out and splash the someone like Haaland in the summer to make sure that something like that does happen. But yeah, they're definitely up there. We saw that crazy game with Bayern and PSG as well that, I can't wait to watch again tonight. Because, City obviously have to play the winners, and it's not going to be an easy game with them, with how, Mbappe and Neymar are looking, or just how good Bayern have been the last couple of years.
Bayern were absolutely, I know they lost, but just watching them play is crazy football. And they've got so many good players. If they'd had Lewandowski, I think they would have won that game. They missed a fair few chances, and when you've got Choupo-Moting up front, it's not quite the same. Listen, Kimmich for me as well is one of the best midfielders in the world. He's absolutely puts a ball on the sixpence, and it's just like he's a player. Even as a neutral, I'd like to see him in the Premier League at some point, because I tell you what, he would just dictate games. And PSG, they've got the trump card, haven't they? Mbappe, Neymar. I thought Neymar had a great game again. Mbappe, lightning, and that's the thing. If PSG, Man City will probably favour a PSG over a Bayern, even though Bayern did lose that round. But none of them are easy, absolutely not at all. And I think their vulnerability in the Champions League against the side that both of them got to the final last year. One of them's won it numerous times. It's tough, mate. But Bayern are such a great watch, crazy team. They wouldn't survive. I don't think the Premier League would be a mad one for them, because I think a lot of teams would counter them. But brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Alaba playing like a 10 role in the end. It's nuts, mate. It's nuts what they've done there.
Yeah, it is crazy, and obviously that Leeds win at the weekend was big for them ahead of that game against Manchester United next weekend too. But yeah, they've got it's Liverpool next weekend, and then Manchester United the weekend after. They've got quite a tough run now, Leeds, after what has been a difficult stage of the season before that for them, where they weren't picking up too many points. So a big win for them at the weekend, but it did come with a negative for them. They lost Cooper through a red card. What did you make of that, mate? Did you think it was a red card?
Oh, look, I said earlier, I think just because of the way I've been brought up and the way I've played football, if you get something to the ball, you're all right. But, I think there's one angle that you look at where it's clearly over the ball, and you've got to say that. And he's lunged in as well. And, the minute you leave your feet, I think you're done for, really. You can never really get away with it. So I think in the end, probably a fair decision. I think Leeds are locked out a little bit, probably speaking on Joe's behalf, but they got injured. Their injury problems have sort of sorted themselves out. You've got Strike coming. Llorente's been brilliant for them as well. Robin Koch on the bench. So I think they'll be all right. I'm hoping they do us a bit of a favour against you lot, actually, because I think Leeds will be up for it. They love these big games. They absolutely love them. They've missed them. I think they just keep chugging along. Leeds could be a shock to get in the top 8. I wouldn't write them off. I think Everton looked really poor yesterday. Villa are struggling without Grealish. You never know. So it's going to be a great game, and I think Leeds will finish the season strong.
Thank you for joining me today, Corey, and thank you to everyone in the comments and for watching. And we shall see you again very soon. Enjoy your week, and we shall see you soon. Ta-ra.